capital expenditure in terms of actually investing in infrastructure and recurrent expenditure. And there were some studies that were done that showed there's a stronger correlation between human capital development and expenditure on education that is not just capital expenditure, but is recurrent. I'm wondering, in your engagement at a policy level or government level, is there a recognition of this challenge? And, you know, as I mentioned, as a banker, I just don't look at the components of spending, but the quality of that spending. I wondered whether you could share some insights based on your interactions at government level.
Okay, thank you. That is what you've asked, which is really about investment in education. So that's clearly the remit of the Federal Ministry of Education and also the states, because one of the things we need to understand about education in Nigeria is in a concurrent list in the Constitution. So the federal does, and the state also do their investments in education as well. So yes, there's been the whole talk about how much you spend in recurrent versus capital, but I'm sure this year there's some improvement, planned improvements this year that the ministry is looking at, and I know from conversations with the permanent secretary, Federal Minister of Education, there's going to be a huge focus really around teacher development. So beyond even just your capex, you know, in terms of whether it's investments in your infrastructure in the universities, polytechnics, or what have you, but then the whole softer aspect, which is the content. Because you really can't give what you don't have. So there's a big focus on teacher development, and also if you look within the social investment budget as well, which is also, it also doubles as an aspect of job creation. There's a whole focus of the 500,000 graduate conversion volunteer teacher scheme, teacher core program, which is targeted again in improving the quality of teaching outputs at the primary basic education level. So I think that you would see a difference in the quality of investments in education.
Is there a framework and criteria for that investment? So who's making the decisions? And do they understand the issues at grassroots level? Do they understand the structure of the educational system and where to target the investment to?
Yeah, the Federal Ministry of Education, they meet regularly with the states commissioners of education, if not every quarter. So clearly the framework's being designed and the framework's being championed together, because you see, Federal Ministry will say things like, okay, well, sometimes we do our own bit, but a lot of the states don't do their corresponding aspect. If you look at the UBEC, for example, which is Universal Basic Education, and there's a fund which the states can tap into, there's been a lot of challenges around not all the states are able to draw down on that fund because they are not meeting up with their own part of the game. So there's that collaborative effort from the federal and the state, and that's clearly the remit of the Federal Ministry of Education again, you know. So, but we do interact because my own aspect.
I'm accountable for the Ministry of Education, but let's look at your title, Advisor on Job Creation. Mm-hmm. What types of jobs are you actually looking to create for the needs of the Nigerian economy?
Yeah, so the first thing is the government would try to stimulate. We follow through with the strategy and the focus of the new administration. It's really about creating an enabling environment. So the whole talk around improving business, doing business in Nigeria, and all the investment climate, the business environment. So really that's where you find there's going to be a lot of government support in it. Of course, as well, in terms of job creation, there's also the direct investment of government, like I've spoken around the 500,000 teachers already, and then you also have that with the non-graduates too. So there's a lot of empowerment programs for the artisans, the trade skills, market women. There's a lot of direct government spending there. In addition to all of that, we're also working very actively with the private sector, and the goal is in alliance with the diversification narrative, you know, to try and see what we can do with the agric and agro-allied, especially where we can expand that space and create a lot more jobs in that area. There's also a big focus of the government around solid minerals, even though that may take a little more time before we begin to see a lot of output from there. Construction is also another big area that we are looking at, which can create a lot of jobs, more so as we try to meet up with the infrastructure deficit challenges. And then ICT is also one. There's a plan to deepen what we've all heard earlier on today happening in Yaba in terms of creating a lot more technology hubs across the country and make technology become a household thing across Nigeria. And finally, retail. So those are areas, those are sectors that we're looking at. And just like Akin was also sharing earlier, there's also the focus to look really within the regional competitiveness, of the country, so that you would tap into what is your natural competitive advantage in any region of this country than trying to export something from one region to another region where they don't really have that natural inclination.
That all sounds very well and good. And one of the things that really concerns me is the quality of graduates and expertise. Mrs. Igaga, you talked quite eloquently about some of these issues, but in terms of soft skills, if you notice across the broad spectrum of Nigerian business, employers are always complaining about the fact that candidates or students and graduates don't have soft skills, real world skills. So we talked about theoretical education, we talked about vocational education, but there's a type of investment education that prepares you to be a good leader, that prepares you with a good work ethic base. How are we looking to bridge this gap? Are you seeing the right types of investments specifically? And I guess in one sense, there's an onus on an individual to look at self-development, but what role, for instance, can the private sector, in collaboration with government, play in this?
Thank you very much. With regards to the development of soft skills, leadership skills, opportunities for the students to work in organizations, in industries that are relevant to their profession or to their intended profession would help a lot in developing these skills. A lot of these skills are difficult to learn, say from textbooks or from classrooms. It comes with interaction. You get to the office, you have a difficult person you need to deal with. How do you deal with someone that just doesn't want to be managed or needs to be micromanaged? Things like that I have found out are easier learned in a work environment. And for the young people, if we're able to expose them to these situations at an early age, then they're able to adopt these skills into their lifestyle, to their way of thinking. It incorporates into everything and then invariably affects the output when they eventually enter the workforce.
Back in the day, the education system in Nigeria was considered world class, and you had lots of Africans who would come from Zimbabwe and from all over the place to study. And a large part of what my parents attributed to that degradation is around leadership. And I'm looking at how Nigerian universities, for instance, fare with the rest of the world, and even with other African institutions, and not necessarily just in South Africa, in Ghana, in Zimbabwe, and I'm wondering what has happened. Leadership is one part of the story. There's policy, there's a lack of investment. How do you sort of bring all these things together in your experience, Mrs. Anito?
I'm happy you mentioned South Africa, Ghana, and all of that, because it's important that we look at our own system in Nigeria. At the beginning of the conference, Mark mentioned the fact that the way we teach is you memorize and you have to give back what you've memorized. I've been privileged to go to a private university in Nigeria, a public university in Nigeria, and then I've studied with Stanford University in the US. And the difference in the way we are taught is the fact that you're allowed to think outside Nigeria. I was exposed to Professor Jim Patel, who taught us design thinking, and it was like a playroom. We were treated like 3-year-olds. We were allowed to think, we were allowed to create, we were more innovative. I've never had that type of education, even private university in Nigeria, public university in Nigeria, I didn't have that exposure. The only thing I had close to that was my lecturer in the public university who schooled abroad. She came back with that methodology to teach us international human resource management. So for us, we have to be able to bring creativity into the classroom. We have to be able to teach some of these skills, even though my colleague there mentioned you can get it from the workplace, but there are ways you can incorporate it into the school curriculum that can be taught in the classroom. You are taken to the world where you can explore, you're allowed to fail. It is not a sin to get something wrong. In Nigeria, you fail and it's like you're dead. Although when they introduced me, they said I finished with the first class, but it was because I just couldn't afford to fail. My father would ring it in your head, I didn't pay for my school fees, all my school, I was on scholarship. You cannot come back home telling me you have failed. But the truth is, as an entrepreneur now, failure has been my best teacher. You know, I have learned a lot from the fact that I take the product to the market, it fails, I bring it back, work back on it, make it better, take it back, it fails, fails again and again and again, and then I get it right, then I start making money and people think, oh, she has made it, she hit it.
There's obviously clearly a cultural aspect to that, and I'm quite glad you mentioned the word people like Fred Swanek and Padukawa are doing with the African Leadership Academy Network, but you also mentioned private universities, and historically, when you look at societal structures, government, religious institutions, etc., have been at the backbone of creating societal advancement. Now we have the private sector, which is coming, and employers are looking much more favorably on candidates from your Babcock universities and those over and above, with a few exceptions. So the private sector clearly has a role to play, and before we open it up to the audience for a few questions, Katerina, how does your work converge with what the private sector is doing, and have they been a real enabler of some of the work you're trying to do in local communities?
Okay, first of all, I want to say that I really agree with what you're saying about the private university, and say that it's actually a business. Like, if I look at Malaysia, that's a place where, open university has become a business. How does the private sector complement to what I'm doing? Well, I believe that I'm a private sector. We make clothes and we have empowerment projects. And I believe that private sector is the backbone of any economy and of the majority of changes that do happen in any context. The decision we made years ago of doing empowerment projects, vocational trainings, is because we needed the skills to move forward as a business. So we need to make clothes, we need to print t-shirts, so maybe people cannot make it in a proper way because maybe they've not been exposed, they've not been trained. Well, let's set up a system that can train these people. I mean, we are a small entity, so we cannot make a massive change, but at least the community where we work, we're going to go hand in hand, where private sector wins and the people win because they learn a job, they're either going to work with us or they're going to run their own business, becoming an SME. I'm a truly believer of private sector. I won't say it's easy, but I say that many times it takes too long to wait for public sector to implement certain changes, but because it's massive, like if I think about how are we going to change primary, secondary education, it will take good leadership, good thinking, a lot of time. So meanwhile, we're going to make micro, steps that at least will affect certain communities, certain people, and will create maybe an inspiration for more to happen.
Yeah, we certainly need scale given the magnitude of challenges we face. How do you suppose we put scale into these interventions without losing on the aspect of quality?
Okay, thank you very much for that question. So, Dr. Ezedinma, what about in your experience? How can we scale up to create more of a ripple effect?
Well, let me just start by saying that we have just concluded what we call an industrial skills gap assessment. And one of the major challenges we find in Nigeria is that there is a delink between those who are employing labor and those who are supplying labor. Complete delink. Universities or educational systems are churning out thousands and thousands of people, but the systems, employers cannot employ them. And so what has happened in the first instance is that employers are now beginning to develop their own training systems to be able to engage people to work for them. And when somebody mentioned it in the presentation, you risk the fact that that person you train will eventually move to your competitor. So it lies on government to actually do what the private sector people are supposed to do. Now, we move up a notch and we find out that the Ministry of Education has done a lot of work in trying to normalize the vocational educational system. But they do not have the power to ask the industries to help them define what they need. The industrial sector lies within the Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment.
So both ministries
So,
need to be working.
both ministries need to work together, and the Ministry of Industry, very soon that will happen, it's supposed to set up what is called Sector Skills Councils. Sector Skills Councils are now supposed to define what each sector in the industry requires to be able to train what it needs.
We're going to open up the floor now for additional questions, comments, anything you want to say. I saw a lady's hand there.
My name is Jennifer Anoisha. I'm with the Nigerian German Business. In fact, very vital. Looking at a really wonderful presentation. Thank you for what you're doing. You are right, industrialization of a country, and it starts from, and always had started from, the garment industry. If you go into history all over the world, it was in this industry. So if we go back and start looking at it, I saw your presentation there, if we can pay more attention to the garment industry, maybe we can start taking the vital steps going forward. And Mrs. Desola Agaga, yes. I appreciate what you're doing in Nigeria, coming into Nigeria and looking at people at work and jobs, and there's one missing link. There's a glue that we need, and we need those soft skills. We have isolated, creative, intellectual, wonderful entrepreneurial spirits in Nigeria. We have that. But the link, the glue to get things done and get it done well is missing. And that's those soft skills. And in other industrialized nations, you find that one can actually do things much quicker, think out of the box, have a different alternative ways of doing things, and we are missing that. So the role you're playing here is really vital, and I think you need a better voice, a louder voice, to encourage others to gain these soft skills, to bring this all together, and obviously that links to your entrepreneurial skills. Yeah, so there's so much going on here, so much to do, and we would like to be part of it. We would like to help with change now, in this time, in this generation, and get us the economy ready for the next generation. There's a lot that they have to do, but with people like Kinabiti, seeing from afar the missing links, and can come here and just pick up. I mean, you said 2005 you've been here. Is that 2005, 2006? Six. Just 10 years and so much done. So we can all do that, and I applaud you once again. Thank you. I have no questions.
All right, thank you. Question?
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Femi Mosaki Johnson. I'm from the Institute of Directors, Nigeria. Basically, my comment is directed at Afolabi. I'm so bothered when he had to give us some of the things that his organization, government are trying to do. But I must say that we need to face reality in this situation. He talked about the issue of policy, that there is policy there, accepting that there is no monitoring and evaluation. But I beg to disagree. I don't see any policy. There is no any educational policy in this country. And if they have,